Hello, and welcome to my Fall 2023 reading recap. We've got a stacked lineup here, so let's dive in. I started with Pageboy by Elliot Page, which I gave 2 out of 5. I've enjoyed Elliot's acting work ever since I first saw Hard Candy, and was so excited when he came out as a lesbian, and was curious to hear his story when he came out as trans. Many years ago, when I was a wee little teen, I thought I was trans. I looked into the surgeries and probably would have gone through with it if I had been of age and had the money, but luckily I didn't. When I got older, I realized that gender is just a facade. It's a social construct that causes a lot more issues than it needs to. None of it's real. We have our sex, the parts we have, but gender is all pretend. Girls liking dresses and boys liking sports is all made up, and we just keep following that. That's the real issue at hand here. We need to stop holding these weird gender norms that don't make any sense and really don't apply anymore. Or shouldn't, at least. In this book, Elliot's reasoning for transitioning is often put on not wanting to wear dresses and surface-level things like that. He never once expresses actually feelings of being a man on a deeper level. I 100% believe trans people exist, but I do think it's more rare than it's showing itself to be these days. I've fallen down rabbit holes of stories of people who are detransitioning now or wish they could afford to because they realize that they only transitioned in the first place because of this pretend gender thing that caused it, and not actually being the opposite sex inside. We as a society need to stop separating materialistic things based on sex. It's confusing people, it's hurting people, it's clouding people who genuinely are trans and making them look like jokes. I'm not saying that I believe this of Elliot. I'm just pointing out that that's all he explained here, where I would have loved to hear more of the other side of it. How he knew he was a man based on something other than wearing dresses or wanting to stand to pee. Basically, everyone with a vagina has wanted to pee standing up at some point in their life, when a toilet was out of reach. I've read a lot of horrible things that people have said about him online, and it really is terrible. I wish we could respect people regardless of if you support who they are or not. It's not that hard to use someone's preferred pronouns. We don't need to spread hate about things that we don't understand either. How about instead of using all of that time criticizing his choices, you instead break down these pretend gender barriers so that this happens less often? One of the top reviews on Goodreads explains this all better than I did and in much more detail. I was put off by his overcompensating. He picked up that douchey locker room trash talk real quick. Half of the book is about his sexual conquests, and he words it all repulsively and just sounds like a womanizer. He may have outed some people as well. I doubt he got permission of all of his former sexual partners to be in this book, but I could be wrong. It's just disrespectful. I'm disappointed and overall wouldn't recommend this book. I do, however, highly recommend The Umbrella Academy. It's a great show. Number 2 is The Impossible Knife of Memory by Laurie Halse Anderson. I gave 4 out of 5. Laurie was one of my favorite authors as a teen, but as an adult, I'm not loving her material much anymore. To be fair, I've been struggling a lot with the young adult genre as a whole. Winter Girls was my favorite book when it first came out, but I recently reread it and was horrified by it and my former taste for having liked it so much. I still wanted to give this a shot, though. I believe it was her last fiction book I had to read to be caught up. In this, Haley is the insufferable main character, a teen girl who hates everything and is rude to everyone. She takes care of her addict father, who is a veteran suffering with PTSD. She falls for a guy named Finn who helps her snap out of her, dedicating her entire life to saving her father. In a way, Finn saves her. Haley has this weird separation of people as being either freaks or zombies. Like zombies are the sheeple and freaks are the independent thinkers. It's just a really cringy way of describing things. Felt like she was trying to be quirky and it just annoyed me. I also hate the use of the word freak in anything. I think too many Disney Channel movies calling the kid with glasses or hand-me-down clothes a freak have made it a permanent trigger in my brain. The book has its cringy moments, but overall I was hooked and would definitely recommend it. I really like stories about PTSD causing addiction. Cherry is a great movie as well. I recommend that too. Number 3 is Nimona by N.D. Stevenson. I gave 4.5 out of 5. Nimona is a shapeshifter who partners up with Ballister Blackheart to be a villainous team. I adore her humor in this. She'll randomly turn into a shark and it cracked me up every time. I definitely recommend this if you want some good laughs. Number 4 is Bastard Samurai Volume 1, Samurai Noir, by Oming, Gunter, and Shannon. I gave 1 out of 5. This takes place at a sword school in Manhattan and centers around serial killer, top of his class, Jiro. That alone sounds like it could be an okay read, but it's really gross, and I don't recommend it. Early on, a woman raped a guy and has the audacity to call it making love, and then tries to justify it by saying it was to heal him. The very next page, this guy is talking about killing his dog, and someone rightfully slits the guy's throat. There's a lot of bad comments towards dogs in this. It's not a pleasant read at all, but the color palette is full of pinks and purples, so it is really pretty, and that's all the positivity it's getting from me. Number 5 is Pretty Deadly Volume 1 by DeConnick and Rios. I gave 2.5 out of 5. This has an interesting premise. Death is personified and falls in love. I really hated the first half. There was storytelling and the characters were unnecessarily having sex while telling the story. It was gross and weird. The second half of the book was really good though. There's also a small element of rhyme in parts of it that I really enjoyed. I'd very loosely recommend this. If it's around, sure, but I wouldn't suggest running out to buy it. Number 6, Black Science, Volume 2, Welcome to Nowhere by Remender, Scalera, and White. I gave 4 out of 5. I read Volume 1 of this 5 years ago. I gave it a 3 out of 5 on Goodreads. I remember it being pretty but also boring, so I didn't prioritize proceeding with the series. I'm glad I got around to it eventually though, because this one was really good. It's about scientists in the Eververse. I'm probably mostly grateful to not have sex scenes shoved in my face this time, but I swear the story is good too. Number 7, Black Science Volume 3, Vanishing Pattern by Remender, Scalera, and Denisha. I gave 3 out of 5. I was really enjoying this. It's all about traveling to different worlds to save people, and it's a fun time. But they randomly threw in a woman kissing a married man after he tries shutting it down, albeit not hard enough, but still, that killed the vibe for me. Number 8, The Wicked and the Divine, Volume 1, The Fostak by Gillen, McKelvey, Wilson, and Cowles. I gave 2.5 out of 5. This wasn't my favorite, but it wasn't horrible. It has pop stars that are gods, and it's a really weird storyline, and I think that's what I liked about it. But there's a character called Lucy that is absolutely insufferable. She makes every part of every conversation about sex, and it's really annoying. If you'd remove her, I'd probably add a full star to my rating. This is another very loose recommendation from me. Number 9 is The 5 Fists of Science by Matt Fraction and Steven Sanders. I gave 4 out of 5. This has a unique story that I enjoyed. Nikola Tesla and Mark Twain team up to try to stop a war, but collide with Edison and an evil scientist. I was thoroughly entertained and would recommend this. Number 10, 10 Grand Volume 1 by J. Michael Straczynski and Ben Templesmith, which I gave 4 out of 5. Joe loses his lover and dabbles in the in-between to speak to her while also working a job that side effects keep her safe in the afterlife. Number 11, 10 Grand Volume 2 by J. Michael Straczynski and Ben Templesmith. I gave 3 out of 5. People trick Joe into thinking he's actually communicating with his dead lover. He gets revenge on them and gets the opportunity to travel in time to spend an hour with his real lover. Number 12, Southern Bastards Volume 1, Here Was a Man by Jason Aaron and Jason Latour. I gave 2 out of 5. A former football player returns to his hometown and tries to kill the coach because he's been killing people. I don't really like any of the characters. They're mean to a dog and hospitalize a child. I'm not a fan of this at all and would not recommend. Number 13, The Manhattan Projects, Volume 1, Science Bad by Hickman and Pitara. I gave 4 out of 5. Knockoff Oppenheimer and Einstein take over the story and are working for a corporation called the Manhattan Project, which uses the plans for the atomic bomb as a front for secret alien projects. At one point, Oppenheimer eats brains to gain the knowledge of the person whose brain it is. Very iZombie style. And it had a bunch of weird, funny moments like that throughout. I really enjoyed this and would recommend. Number 14, The Real Folk Blues, a Cowboy Bebop fanbook, written by various authors. I gave 5 out of 5. I love Cowboy Bebop, so this already had a good chance from me. It's a collection of short strips by different creators based on the characters of the series. It's beautifully done, and it's so cool to see all the different art styles for the same characters. Number 15, Vision Volume 1, Little Worse Than a Man by King and Walta. 1 out of 5. I really wanted to enjoy this, and I did during a lot of it. I love the way the family speaks robotic, and I liked seeing the kids' experience in school, but there's so much nastiness with animals, and I do not stand for that, so I would not recommend this. Number 16, Vision Volume 2, Little Better Than a Beast by King, Walta, Walsh, and Belair. Gave 1 out of 5. Vision's brother comes to town, accidentally kills his sons, so Vision's wife kills him, their pet, and then herself, and leaves him alone to take care of his daughter. It's a mess, and it would be humorous if they'd stop hurting animals, so again, I would not recommend this one either. Number 17, The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2, Revelations, by J. Michael Straczynski and John Romita Jr. and Scott Hanna, which I gave 3 out of 5. This wasn't bad by any means, but it's boring. We've heard Spider-Man's origin story a million times, and this isn't that, but it is him telling Aunt May about being Spider-Man as an adult. Spider-Man as a scruffy school teacher is so off-putting to me. I'd only recommend this if you're a hardcore Spider-Man completionist, but if you don't care about reading all of his books, then this would be an okay one to skip. Number 18, Miss Marvel Volume 1, No Normal, by Wilson, Alfano, and Herring. I gave 3 out of 5. A 16-year-old Muslim girl gets granted superpowers and the costume of a young Captain Marvel, and she navigates the early stages of becoming a hero. The first volumes of comic series are all very similar, so it's nothing special, but it's okay, so I'd give it a soft recommend. Number 19, Dr. Horrible and Other Horrible Stories by Zach Whedon, Eric Canet, Farrell Dalrymple, Jim Rugg, Joelle Jones, and Scott Hepburn. I gave 3.5 out of 5. This is a collection of the not most put together super people, and they all tie together in the end. It's not great, but it's good. Worth a read. I enjoyed this short story approach in this. Number 20, Serenity Volume 1, Those Left Behind, by Joss Whedon, Brett Matthews, and Will Conrad. I gave 3.5 out of 5. Not much happens in this first issue. It follows a crew aboard the Serenity spaceship as they try to find jobs in order to obtain peace. I wouldn't expect anything mind-blowing, but I would recommend it. Number 21, Serenity Volume 2, Better Days by Joss Whedon, Brett Matthews, and Will Conrad. I gave 2 out of 5. Much like the first one, except now they're working. There's horrors and there's sex. I just don't feel the need to over-sexualize everything. I wouldn't really recommend this one. Number 22, Serenity Volume 3, The Shepherd's Tale by Joss Whedon, Zach Whedon, and Chris Samney. I gave 2 out of 5. Another boring volume that covers the backstory of Shepherd Book. I'm not familiar enough with the series to care, so I don't know if it's a good recommendation. If you are familiar, maybe. Number 23, Tuskegee Heirs, Volume 1, Flames of Destiny by Burnham and Williams. I gave 3.5 out of 5. A futuristic Top Gun with interesting mind connecting to ships technology. It's good, but I can't stand some of the dialogue. I'd still recommend this though, it's a fun read. Number 24, I, Vampire, Volume 1, Tainted Love, by Joshua Hale and Andrea Sarantino. I gave 2.5 out of 5. A pretty generic vampire story with an appearance from Batman. I'd give it a 3 if they didn't have the misguided, let's not kill the killers trope. It's okay though. I'd only recommend this if you're heavily obsessed with vampires or are a Batman completionist. Number 25, Superman, Red Sun, by Mark Miller, Dave Johnson, and Killian Plunkett. I gave 1.5 out of 5. A politically charged, extremely boring edition of Superman in an alternate universe where Lois Lane is married to Lex Luthor. I wouldn't recommend it. It was a chore to get through. Number 26, Fables, Volume 1, Legends in Exile by Will Willingham, Lan Medina, and Steve Laloa. I gave 3 out of 5. This is very much like an Agatha Christie novel, but with classic fairy tale characters. I do enjoy the concept a lot, but they threw in random sexual bits that were unnecessary and really took me out of the story. It also ends with unrelated short stories, and a man finds 2 sleeping women and kisses them both, and that's just direct assault and icky, but that's also how fairy tales have been. I don't know. I would recommend because it's silly, but you've been warned. Number 27, Escape Essentials by Roald Dahl, and many more. I gave 3.5 out of 5. A group of writers came together and made this mystery story radio show. I really enjoy the experience of listening to this and definitely recommend. Number 28, My Uncle Oswald by Roald Dahl. I gave 0 out of 5. This is just porn. I would not recommend at all. Number 29, Elvis and Me, The True Story of the Love Between Priscilla Presley and the King of Rock and Roll by Priscilla Presley. I gave 4 out of 5. Elvis's grooming of Priscilla has always disturbed me. For the record, this is what grooming is. I feel like that word has been stretched so thin these days that people will call Miss Honey and Matilda a groomer, and that's just not accurate. This here, however, is a prime example. He met her at 14 and gave her this weird illusion of love and whipped her into his ideal woman. The constant affairs he had were her motivation to dress, act, and look exactly the way he wanted, and I think he knew that. I've experienced people like Elvis before, and I sincerely do not think they have souls. Ironically, I think they think women have souls either, and that's why they treat us like toys. On one of her rides to see him when she was young, the driver tried to rape her, and they left that out of the film. I'm so curious why they chose to leave out some of the more brutal details, considering the film's vibe was to feel very sympathetic towards Priscilla, and I feel like that would have added to it. I think her story showcases how hurt people really well. When you cause pain to someone, they're likely to do the same, and so on and so on. The best way to stop this is to end the cycle yourself. She was cheated on so many times that she ended up cheating on him herself, which not only hurts more people, but it gives Elvis more ammunition to cheat more and play the victim card whenever he has to explain his own cheating. I wish she had just left him, but he groomed her into his liking. She couldn't. She was 14, basically raised by this man. Everything he showed her was all that she knew. Her story is just so heartbreaking. I feel for her so much, and I hope she found some kind of peace later on. She still seems to not fully grasp what he did to her, but at least she sees it a little bit now. Number 30, Demonic, Volume 1 by Sabella, Walker, and Dan. I gave 2 out of 5. This was not great. A man's daughter is very sick, and a creepy blonde demon later makes a deal with him that if he kills a bunch of people, his wife and daughter will stay alive and healthy. There's a part where she's talking to him, but the picture shows her creepy-ass tongue licking up his jaw, but it's not acknowledged at all. Why? Was that really necessary? It ends with you finding out that his daughter can see the demon and has her own demon imaginary friend. It sounds cooler than it is, but I also might just hate it a lot because I hate cheating storylines, and he's a big fat cheater, so I have no sympathy for him. Rightfully lose your family and free will. It's called karma. Number 31, Godland, Volume 1, Hello Cosmic by Joe Casey and Tom Scoily. I gave 4.5 out of 5. I'm not even sure how to recap this one. It's trippy, pretty, and fun. A thoroughly good time. I highly recommend. And that's all for my fall recap. I threw in the last few days of December too because I'm thinking of going back to monthly book videos for a while. What was the best book you read in fall? I'd love some recommendations. Thanks for watching!